Thank you for joining us for our video series exploring expertise in commercial real estate property marketing. Today, we're taking a deeper look at the shift from print to digital and why a content marketing strategy is so important. Thank you, Katherine, for making the time to speak with us today and sharing your insights.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Excellent. Let's jump right in. How has your industry adapted from print to online, and what are you doing to accommodate this demand?
Well, I mean, this global pandemic it's accelerated everything, but it's also accelerated trends that we were already seeing. And if you think about the Globe and Mail and also the group I work in, which is the Content Studio, we've been sort of witnessing the print decline for the last several years. So the shift, the more kind of dramatic shift, isn't really a shock to us. So the move to digital was really a natural fit for us. I mean, it's actually a growing opportunity for places like the Globe and Mail. We made a very good decision a few years ago to make our content subscriber-based, meaning that we have a paywall. Although during COVID, we've actually taken down the paywall so that all that information is available to Canadians. So really, this kind of print to digital natural evolution accelerated by COVID, and we're actually, interestingly enough, seeing that this rise in digital is leading to more subscriptions, which is actually great. And we're seeing a lot of brand affinity in the marketplace right now too, because places like the Globe and Mail are almost like essential services during a time of public health crisis, because people need to be informed. And so in some ways we've benefited from that side. But at the end of the day, the print decline was inevitable. Some bright sides as well include the rise of mobile advertising. So that's actually been an area that's really exploded as more and more people are consuming content on their phones. So that's an area we're really excited about. And just sort of stepping back a little bit, places like the Globe and Mail and the Globe Content Studio, which is the team I manage, we're very startup-y in a way. We live in disruption. I mean, media, journalism, it's always being disrupted. It's like not a place where you're going to feel comfortable necessarily, but that in some ways is to our advantage, because when we do get these major events in our lives happening, we know how to adapt and pivot and find opportunities, because we can move very quickly. So in some ways, the rise of digital was always happening, and we're really trying to take advantage of it at this time.
And as it relates to commercial real estate, are you seeing a lot of the changes you're talking about within our industry, or what are you seeing more of as it relates to real estate specifically?
Right. I mean, commercial real estate specifically is an interesting one. So I do manage the regular series Property Report, which runs in the paper and online. And so I'm very kind of well versed in the stories that are popular, the type of content that resonates with our readers. And what kind of happened in March and April, and I'd say this isn't only for commercial real estate, but there was this real moment of like pause, because obviously we were going through something we had never gone through before. So I would say almost all attention was on COVID-19 and just news and updates and data and information. And that's really when a lot of advertisers, including brands in the CRE space, just hit pause. And fair enough, because no one knows what's going on. The world's been turned upside down. So there was this real dramatic fall off the cliff in terms of advertising. That's not just for the Globe and Mail, but everyone in the world, basically. And so with commercial real estate, now, as I look at May and say June, and what I'm seeing in terms of the brands coming back, we're seeing brands come back because they've taken those 2 months of pause. They've kind of looked to the horizon and planned where they see themselves playing, and decided, now is time to come back. And it's not necessarily in ways we expect. I mean, I think there's traditional stories about what the future of, say, commercial real estate and that sort of thing are always going to be popular, but we're seeing a real interest in trying something new, because as a commercial real estate company, they've maybe had to pivot over the last few months and decide, office space isn't necessarily going to be the future for us in the short term. So we're going to try something new. And we're actually working a lot more closely with clients, almost as consultants, because they also don't want to be tone deaf. tone deaf, because it's risky getting back into advertising or into the market during this time. No one wants to mess it up. And so I can't say there's anything dramatically different now, but we're definitely seeing commercial real estate companies being more open to taking different paths, taking our recommendations, trying new things. And that's been really encouraging.
Well, and that kind of answered my next question, to see the different forms of content and the way our industry is starting to engage with you now. So thank you for covering that off.
Oh, no problem.
I guess, can you tell me a little bit more about the importance of having a solid content marketing strategy and how storytelling is really starting to be used as a strategic tool?
Yes, I mean, content marketing is a really interesting space because it's been around for a while, but I think now more than ever, brands and advertisers are really understanding its value. I mean, just like in terms of quantitative metrics I could throw out at you, at like 3 times conversion rates, like 6 times time spent on, say, content versus just like a banner ad. There's all these like data points that, validate that this actually helps engage your customers a lot more meaningfully than, say, just traditional advertising. But what gets missed sometimes with content marketing is just how difficult it is to do a good job of. And it really should be rooted in your company's strategy. And that actually points to the reason why a lot of brands kind of pulled the plug in March and April, because who can blame them? Their strategy for the next 3 months, 6 months, 9 months was thrown out the window. I mean, we were all in this like limbo phase. So if you don't have your strategy in place, how on earth are you going to layer on content? It simply doesn't make sense. And so even touching on your question before, the types of content like webinars, you saw a lot of webinars in the last few months, like we're doing now. You're seeing a lot of information because people are just looking for answers. They're actually looking to be informed to plan their strategy. And so when I talk about strategy, though, I'm very specific here. It's not just like a term. It really is about your goals as a company, which is hard to predict, obviously, right now, your core activities. So what is it you do that is going to kind of be your business proposition? Your audience, maybe the audience or your customers from 3 months ago aren't the same ones that you're going to go after in the next 6 months. And then, of course, your differentiator, your value proposition, what makes you stand out. And from that is where you layer on your content, because the more tightly constructed your strategy is, the more it makes sense for your content to speak to those things and to achieve your goals. So that's something we really encourage brands to think about before they even come to us, is like, what's your strategy? Because otherwise we can't help you drive business results. So that's something, I mean, I think now more than ever, it's almost like back to basics, like back to the business plan, back to the drawing board in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree more with you. And really having those fundamentals laid out of what your goals are just so important to developing what that strategy is going to look like. So let's finish off here. Tell me what you think is going to be the next big thing for advertising.
The next big thing. Well, I mean, here's something that we're seeing a lot of growth opportunity. We're already seeing it in smaller amounts, but I do think it's going to totally explode, and you're seeing major plays in the space. But podcasts, this is an area that we're getting so much interest from brands we would never expect. I mean, there is an element of like shiny object here, and they like the idea of playing in this new sort of audio space. For advertisers, they depending on what kind of product they have, they can help basically shape the entire narrative of the podcast, but also have pre-roll, mid-roll, lots of new exciting opportunities. So that's a real growth space. And obviously companies like Spotify are sort of staking their future on podcasts. Now, what's been interesting though in the last couple months is habits around listening have really changed. So I'd argue 3-6 months ago, the commute was a massive part of podcasting. I don't know about you, but I listen to a podcast every time I drove into the city. Now that habit is gone, I mean, I don't listen as much, or if I do, it's like maybe listening to a podcast with my family at night. So there's a lot of interesting dynamics happening in the space, and I think that's really only going to keep growing. The other area of opportunity we're looking to, although it depends on a few factors being in places, virtual reality and e-gaming. But I think 5G really needs to like exist in the market for this to really come to fruition. I think we're seeing a lot of examples of its potential, and some companies are using it really well. I think commercial real estate's a very fascinating area of exploration for VR. But I think until we kind of address those latency issues, I know personally now VR, it makes me a little bit sick, but I think eventually that will change, and that's going to be massive for advertisers. So internally, our team is like, even though we don't expect necessarily to do a virtual reality program in the next, say, 3 months, we are really focused on educating ourselves if and when that opportunity is like viable.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for sharing your insights. This has been extremely informative. We appreciate you taking the time to speak with us today.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Excellent.